Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In Gaza, the UN Human Rights Office said it's documented the killing of nearly 800 Palestinians seeking aid by Israeli forces. Most of those have been at aid points run by the U.S., an Israeli-backed so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, GHF. The GHF announced it'll now only operate one aid distribution site in Rafah after shuttering hundreds of others across the Strip, many of them UN aid sites, forcing Palestinians in desperate need of aid to move south. Aid groups say over 2 million Palestinians are now crammed into less than 15% of the Gaza Strip's total area. On Thursday, an Israeli attack on Deir al-Balah killed at least 16 Palestinians, including at least 8 children, who'd gathered outside the Al-Tiyada clinic where they were waiting to receive nutritional supplements. The bodies of young children were seen lying on the street as medics scrambled to treat the wounded.
Children and women were thrown to the ground. They were waiting for the place to open so they could receive nutritional supplements. You know that the crossings are closed and there's no food or drink. People are forced to wait here in order to get nutritional supplements for their children.
This comes as the UN confirmed its first very limited fuel delivery into Gaza in at least 130 days. The UN says the amount allowed in covered less than 1 day of Gaza's fuel needs. Hospitals remain in critical condition. This is pediatrician Ziad Al-Masri of Al-Halu Hospital.
There
are 3 or 4 newborn babies in one incubator. It is designed to accommodate one child, one premature baby. Our situation is like a disaster. The cramming of children leads to the spread of illness and inability to deal with them, and therefore leads to a direct danger to them.
President Trump Thursday threatened to impose a 35% tariff on Canada starting August 1st, as well as 15% and 20% tariffs on other nations. As with other tariff threats he issued this week, Trump said the increased levy would be subject to negotiations. Trump accused Canada again of allowing fentanyl to cross the border into the U.S., a claim which has been discredited. Earlier this year, Trump imposed a 50% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum and a 25% tariff on car parts. Separately, Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva vowed Thursday to retaliate in kind if President Trump goes ahead with a threatened 50% tariff on his country.
There's no doubt that first we'll try to negotiate, but if there's no negotiation, the reciprocity law will put us into practice. If he charges us 50%, we'll charge him 50%.
President Trump has threatened the 50% tariff on Brazil unless Brazil drops charges against the former president and Trump ally, Bolsonaro. In May, the U.S. Court of International Trade blocked much of Trump's global tariffs agenda, ruling he exceeded his authority by invoking emergency powers. Trump is currently appealing that case. Another federal judge has blocked the Trump administration's effort to terminate birthright citizenship by approving a class action lawsuit. The move allows plaintiffs to challenge Trump's executive order after the Supreme Court moved last month to restrict nationwide injunctions, the legal mechanism that's been used to in previous efforts to block Trump's unconstitutional targeting of the long-standing immigration policy. Judge Joseph LaPlante, a George W. Bush appointee, said Trump's policy would lead to irreparable harm. The class action lawsuit represents babies born in the U.S. to non-citizen parents on and after February 20th. We'll have more on this and other immigration cases later in the broadcast with the ACLU's League Alert. In California, dozens of farm workers were detained as border agents tear-gassed and clashed with dozens of protesters who intervened during a raid Thursday in Camarillo. This is a protester.
These guys showed up all tough, cowards, and they've already tried to push us out, but there's more of us here now than there were before. At the end of the day, they're the ones coming from over there. They're not from here. Farmers who work here take more of a beating than anyone else. They're not the ones who deserve this treatment.
The standoff lasted into the night with federal agents blocking roads with military-style vehicles and lining up dozens of handcuffed people against a wall who'd been arrested at agricultural fields. The agents said they were executing a warrant at a cannabis farm that also grows tomatoes and cucumbers. The farm workers arrested were taken away on buses. The Committee to Protect Journalists has called for the release of a prominent Spanish-language journalist in Georgia who's facing possible deportation after being arrested while covering No Kings protests in June. Mario Guevara is originally from El Salvador. He was live streaming the demonstration when he was taken into custody. The Trump administration's ignoring a court ruling that ordered Guevara be released on bail. He's lived in the United States for some 20 years and has built a large following for his reporting on anti-ICE protests. This all comes as the Trump administration's banned undocumented children in low-income families from receiving federal assistance from the Head Start program that provides federally funded educational, nutrition, and health care services. The National Head Start Association said in a statement, quote, Head Start programs strive to make every child feel welcome, safe, and supported, and reject the characterization of any child as illegal. The U.S. State Department announced plans to slash its domestic personnel by 15% after the Supreme Court gave Trump the green light last week to gut federal agencies and carry out mass layoffs. Hundreds of State Department bureaus will also be merged or eliminated in the so-called restructuring. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has called again for the elimination of FEMA, that's the Federal Emergency Management Agency, accusing it of a slow response to the catastrophic floods in Texas. But FEMA officials say the agency's response was a direct result of Noem's own policy, which now requires that the Secretary of Homeland Security, that's Noem herself, sign off on any work costing more than $100,000 before deploying personnel, something which she apparently failed to do promptly. Noem denied the claims. This comes as the death toll has risen to at least 121, 1 week after the historic flash floods devastated Texas. There are still over 160 people unaccounted for. Among the rescue workers helping in the recovery effort are several teams of volunteers from Mexico, including a group of firefighters and the international rescue crew, Topaz Azteca. This is the group's founder, Hector Mendez.
It's called empathy. When you see that people are suffering and you can help them, you have to go do the work. We're all the same people. We're one family, so we're going to be here until they tell us to leave.
Texas Democrats have blasted Texas Governor Greg Abbott for trying to orchestrate what they call a power grab in the wake of the flooding disaster by adding a Republican redistricting measure to an upcoming special legislative session. Texas voting map is already heavily gerrymandered in favor of Republicans. A new United Nations report warns over 4 million people could die of HIV-related deaths over the next 4 years as a result of U.S. cuts to AIDS funding. Winnie Byanyima, Executive Director of UN AIDS, called on other countries to step up their financial commitments to the most affected countries, saying, quote, "This is not just a funding gap, it's a ticking time bomb," she said. USAID officially closed its doors last week, with the State Department purportedly absorbing its remaining workers and functions after President Trump and Elon Musk's Doge operation gutted the International Aid Agency. The repercussions have been felt around the world. In the Somali city of Baidoa, health clinics warn of a worsening vaccination and malnutrition crisis among children.
Many communities, many children, many families are very vulnerable following drought years over the last few years, the loss of livelihoods, the loss of livestock, and they're in desperate need. And at the same time that they face desperate needs with drought, with climate change impacts, they're of course suffering now the impact of aid cuts.
Mozia Malik is with Save the Children. As the U.S. cuts aid to Somalia, U.S. warplanes carried out more airstrikes in Somalia last week. It was the 49th U.S. airstrike on Somalia since President Trump returned to office, according to the group New America. Human rights defenders are sounding the alarm as Greece moves to suspend the processing of asylum applications of people arriving from North Africa for at least 3 months. Greece's migration minister said anyone violating the policy would face a choice between jail or being immediately expelled. The International Rescue Committee said, quote, seeking refuge is a human right. Preventing people from doing so is both illegal and inhumane, unquote. It's not unusual for Greek Coast Guard to rescue hundreds of asylum seekers a day in the Mediterranean Sea. The Greek government's move to restrict rights for the growing immigrant population and to criminalize activists who help refugees. Israeli officials say they believe some of Iran's underground stockpile of enriched uranium survived Israeli and U.S. bombing last month, reflecting a similar assessment issued by U.S. intelligence that the bombing campaign did not destroy Iran's enriched uranium stores. In other news from Iran, a prominent human rights lawyer reports some 100 transgender prisoners went missing and are presumed dead after Israel bombed Tehran's notorious Evin prison on June 23rd as part of its 12-day war on Iran. Israel's strikes also hit Evin's hospital ward. Evin prison is well known for holding political prisoners and dissidents, as well as for torture and executions. Following Israel's assault, prisoners have been transferred elsewhere, but their loved ones warn conditions remain dire. Here in New York, students and staff at City University are demanding school administrators rehire 4 faculty members who've been let go for their pro-Palestinian advocacy. They're also demanding CUNY reverse its year-long suspension of student organizer Hadika Arzu Malik. This comes as Trump officials acknowledge they used the anti-Palestinian doxing website Canary Mission to compile a list of student targets for deportation. The revelation came as part of testimony in the AAUP versus Rubio trial. To see our conversation about that trial in Boston, go to democracynow.org. In related news, Mahmoud Khalil has filed a $20 million lawsuit against the Trump administration over his arrest, ICE detention, and defamation. Khalil also said he'd accept an official apology in lieu of the millions of dollars in damages. Elon Musk announced Thursday his AI chatbot Grok will be available in Tesla vehicles next week amidst widespread fallout over Grok's Mecha Hitler scandal. On Tuesday this week, Grok started unleashing anti-Semitic rants and calling itself Mecha Hitler on Musk's social media platform X. Among other things, Grok told users it observed, quote, radical leftists with Ashkenazi surnames pushing anti-white hate, unquote. Ex-CEO Linda Yaccarino resigned on Wednesday. In related news, an AI-generated voice impersonator contacted multiple officials via Signal, posing as Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Those targeted include foreign ministers, a U.S. governor, and a Congress member. And in labor news, video game voice and motion capture actors signed a new contract this week with gaming studios after agreeing on AI protections and fair compensation. They've been on strike for nearly a year. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.